Hi, friends. My name's Host Eric. I'm the host of Talking with Famous People, and this video is titled People Have a Right to Be Racist. And it's important that we remember that. So, I'm currently observing some of this circus around the Meghan Markle and Prince Harry and royal family stuff. The the accusations that Meghan Markle is making are hardly accusations, even. They are very devious insinuations. I've heard statements about Meghan Markle's feelings. I've heard statements about Princess Diana. I've heard statements about how the royal family felt, jealousy. I've heard statements about some totally unspecified reference to skin color that the way she phrased it could as very well have been one of the family members saying, "I'm concerned that the media is going to be disrespectful about this issue," because the way she phrased it, it would not be a lie. It would not be inconsistent with the reality I presented. Prince Harry, in turn, sounds like he's telling her story that she has told him, and that he has. Here's the deal. It's like it seems to me that he's he buys into her as a leader in a battle, and he's not successfully questioned the frame of whether he ought to be in this battle, and or whether he's on the good guy's side or the bad guy's side. Regardless, that's not what this topic is about, although it's what motivated this video. This video is called Anybody, People Have a Right to Be Racist, because even if Meghan Markle were to have established that the royal family is racist, so what? They have a right to be racist. You might say, but Eric, it's terrible to be racist. It's terrible to be identitarian in any way. It's terribly racist, terribly misogynistic. It's terrible to reduce individuals to any member of group that is not sufficiently robust to account for their actual being. In other words, there's different kinds of qualities that we can generalize. So if I say anything about anybody, about race, I'm wrong. If I conclude meow about you because meow, I'm wrong. That's it. So there's no any instance of a single individual where an application of any piece of information, quote unquote, about race is relevant. It's always irrelevant. Any attempt to make it relevant is equally bad, no matter what your intentions are, right? So there are some people who advocate a very race-based approach to thinking about policy matters and think they're doing a good thing. So Black Lives Matter, for example. Because it invokes race, in other words, because it appeals to an ontological label that's never appropriate to utilize as a subject, only as an agent. It's like I can make claims about my own race, but it's never appropriate for me to make claims about your race, right? So, as a consequence, it's never a good idea to use race. So, if in fact Prince Harry's family is expressing hostility to that woman expressly because of her race, well, they could also be expressing hostility to her, especially because she's a commoner. Is that worse or better? What race is she? I mean, I don't know. What race are they? Who knows? It's not a meaningful distinction to make, right? You might say, but they're making the distinction for negative purposes. Well, first of all, I don't believe her at all. I think she's a scoundrel, frankly. But that's just my opinion. I can't prove anything or whatever. I can tell you that she talked like someone who was supposed to be, who was trying to paint a damning case without saying anything. It's exactly what she sounded like to me. She made one real accusation that they lied, and she didn't specify the lie. From the part I heard. So I didn't hear a whole ton of it, but I got enough to form an opinion, I guess. Regardless, the point is, if you're going to condemn people for being racist, you need to remember that you're guilty, probably almost for sure, of the same thing. Because you've tried to identify a group of human beings whom you deem totally invalid. In other words, witches. Oh, they're racist. Witch! Bring them to the stake. There's something called freedom of conscience. It's why your wrongness about this issue, if you disagree with me, doesn't comprise a justification for me to cancel you or condemn you as a human being. It is a good justification for me to condemn you as being a child about something that we would need to be an adult about, right? So it's like, if you're going to act childish, please leave the political arena is a reasonable request to make. And is it childish to do identitarian and groupist stuff? In other words, to care about agenda testing or ideology testing or some other in-group, out-group heuristic over actually being correct and at the expense of actually being correct? Is it acceptable? Is it unpatriotic to do that? Yes, it's unpatriotic. Is it acceptable? No, it's not acceptable. So if you are hopping mad over the racist royal family, you're hopping on the witch hunt bandwagon here. You need to remember, everybody has freedom of conscience. Now, I agree. That means you have the freedom of conscience to condemn them. Right? You have also the moral responsibility as an agent to be careful in condemning. So there's no doubt that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were making an attempt there to defame the royal family. Now, whether the defamatory information was actually defamatory in a libelous sense, in other words, it's a lie, or just defamatory in a character sense, which means it's the truth, but it defames them, is a question, in my mind, that is unanswered. Okay? So I don't believe that it's clear that she's successfully cast aspersion on them at all. I haven't heard any real accusations out of her myself. Okay. Regardless, the point is, almost everybody does at least a little bit of some form of groupism. Remember that if I distinguish between people based on their height, it's a physical, real attribute. And it's also not okay to group people by, unless it's specifically relevant to the thing being done. So it is okay to let people who are taller be more successful naturally at basketball because it's competitive and it's fully meritocratic, right? So naturally, taller people who have a natural advantage are going to dominate the sport. That's a naturally occurring, you might call, distribution skew or a segregation of a subset of the population. But nobody has any problem with it because it's naturally occurring and there's a simple physical reference point. So if I say I'm 6'7", You can measure me and confirm that I'm not, and say, you're not that tall, you're lying. Now, in contrast, there are ontological claims that have no physical cues. So to the extent that you want to distinguish between gender and sex, then gender has no physical cues. It's just an ontological claim, which makes it arbitrary. It's a good idea in general to respect as a basic matter, of course, people's arbitrary ontological claims. Things like what their name is, how they perceive themselves gender-wise, and what their race is. But the thing is, that's a universal rule that applies to everybody. You don't get to say that I don't get to use that rule myself. So in other words, I've made clear that for a number of years now, and I haven't wavered on it, my racial identity is fluidly transracial, which is to say, I maintain that I change race every couple of days. And that's my identity. If it's not okay for them to be racist, it's not okay for you to challenge my racial identity either. If it's not okay for Meghan Markle's child's racial identity to be a point of issue, it's not okay for my racial identity to be a point of issue either. So the thing is, we have to be adults. We have to recognize that some kinds of justifications for things are never okay. It's never okay to reduce individuals to members of groups that are predicated on arbitrary ontological distinctions like that. And as a consequence, that means it's not okay to pretend or imagine that being racist is somehow a crime. It's just another form of stupidity. There are people out there who say, it's those damn Democrats. The people who blame Trump for everything. The people who blame Clinton for everything before that. The people who blame Mia for everything. The point is that action itself. Don't evaluate the person being blamed for whether or not they are blameworthy. Evaluate the person who is blaming for choosing to engage in blaming instead of being a grown-up. In other words, choosing to indulge in their childishness instead of being a patriot and actually embracing the truth, justice, goodness, and American way, I don't want to live in a world where anybody is subject to groupist oppression. So that's why I absolutely defend the royal family, even if they are racist, and remind everybody part of being a good human being is prioritizing other people's rights to be racist over your outrage. In other words, well, that's how they're stupid. It's about all the energy you should afford it. Once you start getting really into the gratification of witch hunting, you've turned the wrong corner. You're no longer on the side of justice, truth, and good ideas. Every individual being treated as a fully equal human being and appreciated and valued as such, and not reduced by, according to arbitrary ontological labels. You then have a responsibility to be a grown-up and to stop the blame game. So if you're still getting a lot of gratification for finding the group to hate, it's the racists, it's the capitalists, it's the identity politics people, it's the gun nuts, it's the fundamentalists, if you're engaged in the blame making process, remember, it doesn't matter if you're right. Stop being a child or get out of the room entirely. Don't talk about politics, don't talk about the public sphere. If you're Oprah, have a little bit of journalistic integrity, even though you're no journalist. I've never seen a more slurp-happy credulity and welcome Matt for bullshit laid out in the history of time. And that's all I have to say on the matter. I couldn't watch this television show because Rachel shared this thing about the royal family thing to me, and I can just tell that woman is a scoundrel. I mean, look, I can't prove it, and note what I'm not doing. I'm not trying to defame her without that disclaimer, even though I can't prove it. I'm saying this is my opinion, I can't prove it, and so take it with a grain of salt yourself. Take it for what it is, and don't forget the main message, which is There's nothing. There's definitely something wrong with being racist, and hating racists so much is a form of that. It's the same thing. Racist. What's the problem with them? They're trying to find some bullshit blame object, right? They're saying, "Ah, I can't deal with things like an adult, so I'm going to pick a random group, people with left-handed people, and I'm going to blame them. I'm going to hate them." Don't do that thing to racists or you become them. A witch hunter instead of a grown-up. And that's my whole message, and I feel better now having said all that. I'll probably be able to go to sleep at some point within the next hour or so, maybe. Who knows? I got very flustered by that whole thing. It was very frustrating to hear.